Fire in the hole, let's cook some beans. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome once again to my backyard. I've got an awesome recipe to share with you today. I've got my Lodge cast iron pot getting hot on the grill. We're going to start this out right. Oh, I want to mention I got this from my buddy EW Modemac. He's the guy who runs Cast Iron Chaos YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description with his original video that he made of this recipe. I'm changing it around a little bit just because that's the kind of idiot I am. I'm just going to change it to my taste. But the original recipe is awesome, and this recipe is going to be awesome too. So stay tuned. First thing we're going to do, we're going to throw a half a pound of bacon in there to get this started. And one whole diced up white onion. And we're going to get that going, and while that's cooking we'll make the sauce for the beans, so stay tuned. The bacon and onion are rendering down in my cast iron pot. Hope it's going to be big enough to do all these beans. I got a pound of pinto beans. EW use white beans, but anyway, we're going to make the sauce now for the beans. Start this out with a cup of brown sugar. Get in there. Cup of brown sugar and a cup of Grandma's molasses. Good old Grandma, she loved her molasses, and this happens to be molasses on a cold day. It's 60 degrees here in South Florida today. That's cold for us, you know, relatively cold. I know in some parts of the country like Nebraska it's so cold like Dan can't even fire up his grill. But you see how that molasses is pouring out today. Okay, so we got a cup of molasses that we got to get out of there and into that sauce. This is the sauce for the beans. I got to scrape that out of my thingy here, my cup measure. Okay. Anyway, we'll get that mixed up, and then we got to put a whole can of tomato paste in there, and sometimes it'll come out whole and sometimes it won't. Alright, it ain't coming out today. Today it's cold today and everything's going slow. It's going to be a long, low and slow cook too. I'll put a link in the description, like I said, to EW's original recipe. Mine is a variant of his. I'm changing it up a little bit. I didn't have all the ingredients on hand that he used. For instance, I didn't have any cloves. So I can't use cloves if I don't have them. And we're going to get that tomato paste incorporated in there. Okay, the next thing we need is a fourth of a cup of apple cider vinegar, which I happen to have right here. This needs to loosen up a bit, this stuff. Let's put about a fourth of a cup of apple cider vinegar in there. Then we got some, now EW said he doesn't like to use Worcestershire sauce in his beans. But I thought, you know, I like Worcestershire sauce. So I'm going to put a fourth of a cup of Worcestershire sauce in there. Sorry EW, I'm changing your recipe up a little bit. But I think it's going to be just as good as yours. Not better, but just as good. And then we also have some ground mustard, dry mustard. We need a tablespoon of that in there. Tablespoon of dry mustard. We don't want the aluminum foil from the package in there, but we do want the dry mustard in there. Okay, and one more thing EW I'm throwing in there you may or may not approve of, but I'm going to put a cup of ketchup. Because I only put one can of tomato paste, so to make up for the shortfall of tomato, I'm going to put a cup of ketchup in there. And I'm going to mix this all up. And what I got here is actually a pretty decent barbecue sauce right here. This could double as a barbecue sauce. An awesome barbecue sauce. You could put a little bit of liquid smoke in there maybe, or I don't know, almost anything. You know, you could add whatever you wanted to it to make an awesome barbecue sauce. But I'm going to mix that all up. Oh yeah, we need a little bit of salt, pepper, and garlic in there. About a tablespoon of each, salt, pepper, and garlic, to season up our sauce. And to further sweeten it, I'm going to put a 1/4 cup of regular table sugar. So we've got molasses, brown sugar, and white sugar in there. That's a lot of sugar. So we're making a kind of a sweet sauce for our beans. This is kind of a sort of a Boston bean sauce. Got to break up that brown sugar clumped up on me. Okay, so that's our sauce anyway. So let's get our beans out here and get this whole thing rocking. Stay tuned. So I moved the pot off of direct heat onto indirect heat. I've got my beans. These are Pinto beans that I soaked overnight, and half of them are the ones that Pango Joe gave me, and half of them were, I went and got some more Pinto beans, and we're going to dump them in there along with the soaking liquid, the water that they were soaked in. We might have to add more liquid to that later. We'll see as time goes by, as the day goes by and the day progresses. I'm going to mix that in with that bacon and onions into the Pinto beans that have been soaking all night. Then we're going to put some of that sauce in there, about 3/4 of the sauce into that pot. We're going to reserve a little bit of it for the pork. So let me get that in there and get that mixed up. That's the bean sauce. It's going to be so good. Oh man. It already looks good, doesn't it? Can you see that? Look at that bacon up there. Get off of there. Okay, we got the bacon, the onions, the sauce, and the beans. This is going to cook all day. This has got to bake all day. But let me get my pork out here and we'll get that rocking and I'll show you what that looks like. So stay tuned. I'll take a closer look at that pot. Don't that look awesome? That is beautiful. That's that baked beans. Right there, baby. Okay, EW, I hope I'm making you proud on this one. I've been trying to do this for a long time. Been trying to adapt it to the grill. I think I got it rocking, so stay tuned. My pot of beans is cooking on indirect heat, and on the direct heat, I've got a half a pork shoulder. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm not going to cook it on the hot coals. I'm just going to sear it up a little bit on the hot coals just to get a little bit of smoke and fire on it. We're not looking to cook it through. We're just looking to get a little bit of smoke and fire on there. It's hard to see with that light being blocked. How's that? That's a little bit better. And that's a half of a boneless pork shoulder. Pork, what do you call a pork butt? There's no bone in it. The bone's been removed. And we're just going to sear it up a little bit on the fire, like that, just to get a little smoke flavor on it. And then what I'm going to do is, once I get it seared up, I'm going to take some of that sauce, some of that awesome sauce, and just paint it with some of that that bean sauce, like that. I'm not looking to glaze it or, really do anything to it. Just want to get it on there because I'm going to put that in the pot. I'm going to put the rest of the bean sauce back in the pot. That bean sauce is awesome, by the way. Awesome sauce. Get that stirred up. Looking good over there. Okay? So I'm going to take my seared up pork and get him into the pot. Like so. How's that look? Let's zoom in on that. Yeah, baby. Looks good enough to eat already. But it's not. And it's got to cook a long time. I got to put the cover on it. And it's going to cook for like at least 8 hours. So we're going to let that simmer for 8 hours. Whatever shall we do while that's simmering? I don't know. I think maybe we could drink a beer. So stay tuned. At long last, it's beer 30. There's the Frosty Root Boy mug, the ridiculously Frosty Root Boy mug. And here's today's beer, This is Dogfish Head Liquid Truth Serum IPA, 6.8 alcohol by volume. This is a continuously hopped IPA in the style of their 60, 90, and 120 minute IPAs. I don't know anything about this beer too much except that it's continuously hopped, and I'm expecting a high IBU and a high hoppiness quotient to this. It's kind of a golden color. It's a very pretty beer. Very pretty golden color. I think it's going to be a lot like their other IPAs in that it'll be a very hoppy IPA and it'll be a very delicious IPA. So let's take a sniff of that. What do you think? Ah, man, it smells great. You can smell the grapefruit flavor from the hops and the barley, hops and barley. What could be better? Dogfish Head, always a good beer from Dogfish Head. I think they're in San Diego where Greg lives. Anyway, let's quaff the froth off it. Roll, what do you think, baby? Man, that's delicious. An excellent IPA, excellent flavor. IBUs are high because it's got a hoppy flavor, but it's awesome. It's an awesome IPA from Dogfish Head. Okay, it's time to check on our beans, shred up our meat, and take a taste of it, so stay tuned. Well, the pork and beans are finally done, but I gotta tell you what, when you see what I'm gonna do here, you're gonna freak out. Look how tender that pork is. I'm gonna pull it apart with a fork like that, fling it into the bushes like that. I'm just gonna pull it apart and just mix it in with those beans. And this is the most awesome pork and beans you could ever have. It's got so much beautiful pulled pork in it, and that sauce from the beans is just amazing, just excellent. I'm just gonna mix that all together a little bit. I'm gonna get a little bit of that on my plate to take a taste test of some of those beans and that bacon and onions and all that stuff that was in there. Let me just get a little bit of that in my plate. Get a bit of that beans in there. Get a close-up of that bowl so you can see what's going on here. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When I say pork and beans, I mean pork and beans, because that is some, you know, I brought a spoon instead of a fork, and this is more of a fork dish than anything else. Let me get some of that pork in my mouth. It's hot still. You know, I just took it off the grill. It's an 8-hour cook, but well worth the wait. Excellent recipe from Cast Iron Chaos. Look at that fork full of beans and pork. Oh, that's awesome. That's an awesome recipe. You got to give this a try. It's some of the best pulled pork I've ever had. And I got to tell you, the beans are awesome too. You're looking at an 8 to 10 hour cook though. And I'll tell you something else. If you make this in the oven, your whole house will smell like $1,000,000. But anyway, that's my video. You know what I always say, if you like this crap, please subscribe. If you don't, go up and see a dude. He's got like 500 subscribers. He needs more. It's called The Real Show Barbecue. Go check him out. And come back next week. We may not cook anything good, but tell you what, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is pork and beans with the emphasis on the pork. That is so good. Awesome. Babies, try this recipe. Cook it in your oven. Your whole house will smell like $1,000,000. Anyway, we'll see you next week. Bye.